I guess it's time to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carl von Stetten. I'm a Geographic Information Systems Analyst with Central SAN, and I'm going to be talking about how we use ColdFusion as part of our effort to build our next generation web GIS and asset management systems. And just sort of as a little bit of a preface to the session, I'm not showing any code. This is all a demonstration of how we're using ColdFusion to improve our business processes. But if you have specific questions about how we're doing certain things, feel free to ask them. There'll be a Q&A session at the end. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I could perhaps show some code at that point if it helps to answer a question. But this is mostly a demonstration and a discussion about how we're using ColdFusion in our application. So let's go ahead and get started. And let me just switch my view here. All right. And for some reason, my main screen is now locked and not allowing me to. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. So as I said, I'm a GIS analyst. I've been with Central SAN for a little over 23 years now. We started using ColdFusion back in 2002. It came as a product that was bundled with Autodesk Map Guide, which is a web mapping software application that no longer exists. But at the time, it came bundled with a layer ColdFusion, and then we subsequently upgraded to Macromedia ColdFusion, and then to Adobe ColdFusion over the years. So we've been using it for a long time. I am a Adobe certified professional for Adobe ColdFusion since the CF Summit in 2022, and I imagine this year I'll be trying to recertify again this October at the CF Summit in Las Vegas. I work mostly with Esri's ArcGIS Enterprise platform, along with Microsoft SQL Server. We use some very powerful spatial ETL and automation tools from safe software called FME, and of course, Adobe ColdFusion. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction into what Central SAN is, what our organization is, what is asset management, because that's the crux of why we use ColdFusion, and then how we use ColdFusion to support our asset management efforts. So Central SAN is a public agency, was formed in 1946 by residents of Contra Costa County to improve public health and protect the environment. At the time, in 1946, there were a lot of these little isolated communities throughout the central part of Contra Costa County, and most of them were on septic systems or very rudimentary sanitary sewer treatment systems. And that resulted in a lot of rather unpleasant discharges into creeks, into the watershed areas of the central part of our county. And it was recognized that this was a significant health problem. So a special enterprise district was formed, and we have a 5-member board of directors that are elected. And a special enterprise district basically means that we set our own rates and collect fees. We're not totally dependent on property taxes or other taxes from the state or the county to fund our the work that we do. We provide wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services for our communities. And we also take a portion of the treated wastewater, treat it even more, and then distribute for use as recycled water for irrigation and industrial purposes. And then we also have a household hazardous waste collection facility, and that's so people can bring in things like use or leftover paint, fluorescent light tubes and bulbs, and mercury thermometers, and car batteries, and uh, alkaline and lithium batteries that are used, um, as well as other chemicals, household chemicals and such. And the purpose of that is to keep those chemicals and those pollutants from either entering the wastewater stream that we're collecting or being put in landfills, where again it potentially presents a future environmental pollution threat. So we collect it and we arrange for safe disposal or destruction of those materials. We serve about a half a million people in central Contra Costa County. There's more than 15,000 businesses that we also serve, and we have about 145 square mile service area. And if you want to learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do, there's a link to our website that you can look at your leisure. So where is Central San? I keep mentioning Contra Costa County. We are in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're about 30 minutes east of San Francisco. And you can see on the map on the left, this was done for the ColdFusion Summit in Las Vegas. So it kind of gives you the idea of where we are in California in relationship to Las Vegas and Nevada. But you can see that we're in the northern part of the state. And we are right along the San Francisco Bay estuary to our north. The map on the right shows our service area. Those are the cities that we provide service to, the communities in gray. We also serve the communities in kind of that peach color off to the right, Concord and Clayton. They have their own collection systems, but they discharge into one of our large interceptor pipelines, and then it flows into our treatment plant. So we treat for them by contract. They maintain their own collection systems. A few more interesting details about us. We have about 1,500 miles of collection system pipes that we maintain. And if you were to stretch that out end to end, it would go from, say, San Francisco to about halfway across the width of the United States. So it's quite a lot of piping. We treat, on average, between 30 and 50 million gallons of wastewater every day, depending on the weather. Wet weather, those numbers go up toward the 50 million side. During dry weather, it's closer to 30. Not too long ago, back in the really bad winter storms that we had at the end of December 2022 and into January 2023, we received 10 to 20 inches of rain over the period of just a few weeks. And so on December 31st, we had a peak flow of almost 240 million gallons through that day. And that's the most that we have ever seen at our treatment plant that anybody could recall. And we take, as I mentioned, we take about 600 million gallons of the effluent, the treated effluent that we're sending out to the bay. We take about 600 million gallons of that, and we run it through additional treatment and disinfection, and then we distribute that out through pipelines to a number of customers for irrigation purposes, parks, school playground or playing fields, golf courses, things like that. And the most important thing here on this slide is that we are managing about almost $850 million worth of infrastructure assets. And we'll talk a bit more about what infrastructure assets really mean in a few minutes, but those are things that we've been funded through the fees that we collect from our service area from our customers, and we're using to maintain this system for their benefit. So it's important that we not waste that money and that we are prudent with how we maintain those assets. Which brings us to the subject of asset management. And there's this interesting Wikipedia quote I threw on this slide here. But essentially, it's taking that money that we're getting from our customers and using it wisely to invest in the things, the assets that we need to maintain our services, and trying to get the longest life out of those assets once we've purchased them and installed them. So we're managing the entire life cycle, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But basically, from the idea of an asset that we need to the useful life and eventual decommissioning and disposal of it, all of that is part of the asset management life cycle. So when we talk about assets, almost everything we have we consider to be an asset. So we have a lot of buildings that our staff work in or that house equipment that we use in our treatment processes. Those are assets. Our fleet of maintenance vehicles. So you can see an example of one of our hydrovac trucks that we use to clean our lines. Those vehicles and associated mobile equipment, those are assets. Um, in the lower right corner, you see one of our aeration basins at our treatment plant. All of that civil infrastructure, those are assets. Uh, then we get into inside of our treatment plant in our pumping stations. And the upper right, we have a big steam-driven turbine that delivers air to our aeration basins that keep the microbes that are doing the biological processes happy. Those all of the equipment associated with that, and there's as you can see, it's a very complex system there. Those are all assets. Our control systems on the lower left that we use to maintain our treatment plant and keep it running. And on the right, we see one of our pumping stations with the pumps and piping and valves. There's instruments and sensors in there. All of those things are considered assets. So asset management has what we call a life cycle. And it starts out with identifying a need for some asset or a group of assets to perform a function, to provide some kind of treatment process or collection system piping that is needed for a new area of service. And it starts out with planning those things out, identifying what do we need, what are the parameters it has to operate under, uh, so that we can get a good sense of what it is exactly that we're trying to build. And then we move into the design phase where we actually prepare drawings and specifications that identify exactly how all the asset construction work. Sometimes we'll buy equipment directly and install it ourselves. Sometimes we'll buy equipment directly and have the contractor install it. Often the contractor is providing most of the equipment or devices that are being installed. Once the construction is completed or nearing completion, we move into the operations and maintenance or O&M phase. And this is usually the longest part of the asset management lifecycle, especially if we do everything right, because ideally those assets will have an extensive useful life to them. For our collection system assets, when we put new pipes in the ground, that lifespan could be 75 to 100 years. For treatment plant assets, for things like pumps and instruments, their lifespans are not nearly that long. But we try and plan for having as long a lifespan as we can. And to do that, we maintain those assets. And much like if you bought a new car and it came with an owner's manual that said, well, you should get the oil changed and the tires rotated every 5,000 miles, and every 15,000 miles, some extra stuff needs to be maintained or inspected and replaced. And at 75,000 miles, there's some major overhauls that need to happen with engine components. All of that is to keep the car functioning and running as long as it can so that you get the most out of the money that you're spending on this new vehicle. It's the same thing with the assets that we put into place in our treatment plant and in our collection system. We maintain them per the manufacturer's recommendations so that we can get as much life out of them as we can, and that investment is not wasted. Now, during that O&M life cycle, we also do assessments. Goes on periodically. We look at each asset and we look at its condition. We look at how it's performing. We look at how the maintenance has been going. And we start to think about, okay, well, is it in good condition or is it starting to deteriorate? And if it is, then we start thinking about, okay, well, how do we get rid of this asset and replace it with a new one if that particular treatment process or area is still needed to continue functioning. And then we start the cycle all over again. We plan, we design, we build, and as part of the building process, we would remove the old asset that's now reached the end of its useful life and replace it with a brand new one and start that whole O&M phase yet again. So that brings us to the question, how does ColdFusion support asset management at Central SAM? Well, our asset management system is complex. We have a lot of software systems that we use, and this diagram here isn't even everything. It's the major ones that we use for both our O&M operations of our treatment plant and our collection system, but also our permitting with our customers, how they pay when they connect, they pay when they have to make repairs, and we have to inspect their connections to our sewer system. So all of these pieces of software are interrelated, interconnected, and they all serve the overall purpose of our asset management. And the GIS is sort of the backbone, our geographic information system that runs on the ArcGIS enterprise platform from Esri. A lot of these components have a map interface that users can work with, but we provide a more generalized map that I'll show you in a few minutes, that our average users will go in and interact with the most, without having to use the functionality that's within each of those specific applications, and that can be a bit more cumbersome to work with. The ones that are highlighted there in blue are the software applications that we manage, the asset management group. That's the group that I'm part of. We actually manage these applications directly or manage the interactions with the GIS system directly. And ColdFusion plays an important part in this because, as you can see, the little CF symbol boxes on some of those dashed arrow lines connecting the GIS to the other systems, we could go directly from the GIS to those systems, but the end user would still have to go through a bunch of hurdles to get summarized information that answers 90% of their questions. So rather than do that, we use ColdFusion to prepare summary reports that combine data from multiple systems into a single, easily digestible summary of our activities. And then we provide within those summaries links to go into those applications and look deeper if they want to. And as I said, 90% of the time, they don't have to go deeper. They get what they need right there from the ColdFusion reports. But when they have to go deeper, those links are there and they can actually go right into those applications like CityWorks or the IT Pipes software that we use for managing our camera inspections of our pipelines, or to our document management system where we store a lot of important information that's more static documents and records and drawings. And then in that lower left corner, we have our spare parts management tool. I'll show you that a little bit later, but that essentially is an application that's entirely written in ColdFusion, that provides a bit of missing functionality from our asset management maintenance software, CityWorks. So I'll explain that a little bit later. So we have a lot of systems that are connected through ColdFusion to our GIS. The GIS itself, we can pull some of that information back through ColdFusion. We're talking to, right now, we have 3 different GIS databases that we're pulling data from. We have enterprise resource planning systems. We actually have 2 systems in place right now. We're almost out of one and fully into the other, but we used SunGuard for decades, and we've just recently moved almost all of its functionality into the Oracle Cloud solution for local governments. And we recently went live with their permitting and licensing module for our permit counter. So ColdFusion currently is talking to both of those systems, but when we've when Oracle has pretty much become the only system moving forward, we'll remove the SunGuard pieces at some point. We use Laserfiche to manage documents, like I mentioned before, drawings, O&M manuals, other important things that relate to our assets and our infrastructure. We have a maintenance management system that is used across our organization called CityWorks. You can create work orders and to manage performing activities, maintenance activities or repair work. It replaced MainSaver, but we still have a connection to it because the work history on many of our assets prior to 2017, when we implemented CityWorks, that history still lives in the MainSaver database. So we still pull information from it. And then I mentioned that spare parts application that's entirely a ColdFusion application that sort of falls under the umbrella of our maintenance management systems. IT Pipes is the software we use to manage our camera inspections of our collection system pipelines. And then we have some departmental databases that we also connect up to. One is for our environmental compliance group, and that database includes information about businesses that we monitor, that we inspect, that have to meet our requirements for what they discharge into our sewer system. And then we have another database that keeps track of all of our infrastructure projects and how they relate to each other over time. In total, we have about 12 enterprise or departmental databases that are connected through ColdFusion, and our asset management group hosts or manages 8 of those. So the other 4 are managed by the IT department, or as I mentioned, some of those are in the cloud now. So finally, we'll start talking about how we use ColdFusion in this. I'm actually going to move away from the slides and go right into the web app. So I'm going to skip through these slides because it makes more sense if I do this through our mapping interface. So I'm going to switch a couple of screens around here. Okay. I'm hoping that everybody can see a map on their screen now. Maybe if somebody wants to send a message up in the chat and let me know if you're seeing the map. Perfect. Okay, great. So this is this application, we call it Central Portal, and this is the map that most of our staff are using to interact with our collection system, what we call our horizontal assets, the pipes and structures that we use to collect the sewer, the wastewater, and convey it to our treatment plant. And so the dark gray boundary you see on the map here, that's our service area. That greenish area up in the upper right, that's Concord and Clayton. They manage their own sewer system, but they discharge into our pipeline, and we treat their what they collect. So I'm going to zoom into my favorite area of the downtown part of the city of Walnut Creek. And so this map shows our sewer pipelines. It shows the parcels, the properties that we serve. If we were up closer to our treatment plant, there would also be some purple lines on the screen. Those are our recycled water distribution pipelines, but that's a different area. But the map gives us our jumping off point. And so we start talking about asset management when we look at one of these sewer assets, like this pipeline right here. If I were to go and click on the view details, you'll see on the left-hand pane here, we have information about that asset, when it was installed, what the material is, a little bit of information about how we maintain it. And I'm using a test version of our site because I turned a few things off for this demonstration. So this doesn't look exactly like how our production one looks. It's a little bit behind in some of the information that we've added to here. But this is all information that the users can see just by kind of scrolling through this panel here. But the most important part that I want to show is the hyperlinks at the top. because these are asset-specific links through ColdFusion to get information. So I'll start with the first one, which is the job report. And this is a cold, and again, let me just state, some of these are gonna be a little slow coming up because I'm running a local version of the application on my laptop for the purposes of this demonstration. And so it takes a little bit longer than it does when I'm running off of our live servers. So I apologize in advance for some of the little lags you'll see here. But this is an example of the job report, and it gives us information here at the top about the infrastructure project that installed the asset. And then down below, we have a list of all the drawings for that project. And our users are able to go and click the link, and it will open that link in the Laserfish web viewer, and they can zoom in and read the data off the drawing and investigate and do research with it. We also linked things like easement documents and other information that's stored in folders within Laserfish for the permit counter, the work that they do. These all bounce into the Laserfish web link app specific to this particular job. I go back to the map. The next thing that we can look at are the CCTV inspections. So these are every time we've run a camera down through the pipe to inspect the condition from the inside. And so this particular pipe has been inspected twice in the time that we've been collecting the data electronically. One of the nice things is we provide a link to go open a PDF report that the software generates automatically, the IT pipe software. So if they don't want to have to go and actually look at the detailed version of the inspection and watch the video, they just want to get a quick summary of it, they can click that link and it will open up the PDF of the inspection with the observations that were made during the inspection, as well as some nice photos that show the things that they observed, the snapshots of what was going on. But if they really want to go further and see more information, then they can click the View Inspection link. That actually will then throw them over to the IT Pipe software web application. And right to that particular inspection. And on the right, you can see there's the observation log with the things that were noted. They can watch the video. Move this forward. You can actually see what they inspected. And I'm going to purposely avoid anything that might be a little bit unappetizing. So basically just wastewater in the pipe, but you get the idea. So for every one of our assets, we have one or more of these CCTV inspections that have been done over time. And we do them on average, we do them every 10 years to monitor their condition, unless there's specific issues that we've noted already, and we may inspect them more frequently. And these help us to identify which pipes are starting to get to the end of their useful life, and our engineering department will then use that to start planning out the replacement or renovation of those pipes in a timely manner, so that we don't wait for them to fail to fix them. We fix them before they fail. The next, the link here for sewer mains, we have our maintenance information. And so this is pulling information from our CityWorks work management system. You can see these are all the work orders that have been done in CityWorks since we implemented that software in 2016 for the collection system. It's a good summary of the information. You can expand the comments to see them fully. You can see what activity was done. So these are hydroflush. That means they ran a high pressure hose down the pipe and flushed the pipe that way, along with a specific cleaning tool attached to that hose that they used. This one is actually an inspection work order. They went out to inspect what was going on because somebody reported there was water in a utility lid. And they actually turned out it was not our utility lid, so it didn't require any further action. We also have what we call our legacy work orders. These are work orders that were in our prior work management system, and we migrated them into CityWorks. But the way that they're formatted in CityWorks is a bit different. So that's why it's a separate table. The other thing is that these are generally well older than recent history. So if there's an adequate amount of history up above in our contemporary CityWorks work management system, often users don't need to go down here and look at the legacy stuff. But there are times when that is very useful to be able to do research and provide further background information. Lastly, we have links to asset management documents that are tied to these assets. We don't have a lot of them on our collection system, so I'm not even going to bother trying to click that link and open them. But as we start adding more things like investigation reports, or we have a multi-year project going on right now where we're actually visiting each of these maintenance structures. As you can see on the map, this is a maintenance access structure. Most people would think of it's a manhole, but we've gone away from using that term. We call them maintenance access structures now. We have been visiting them all and taking photographs of them from ground level so that our crews can have an easier time finding them again when they go back out to work, especially in some of these that are located in easements in people's backyards or behind businesses or whatever. So we've got photographs of the manhole and the environment around it. Those we're going to be putting in here in the asset management documents area. So those are the ColdFusion reports related to the sewers. We also, as I mentioned, link to our enterprise resource planning system, the permitting module for that. And so when we go to a parcel, again, we have a lot of information here in this left-hand panel of this map that gives information about the address and the owner address and who provides services and things like that. But we also have this permit counter report. Now, running on my laptop, it takes a long time to load. It actually is very quick in production, but for some reason on my laptop, because I've got all the databases running and everything, it's very slow. So I preloaded this particular one for that site. And so as you can see, we have information coming from the Oracle permitting and licensing. And we also have a tab over here for the SunGuard, which is our older permitting system, our older ERP. So you can toggle between them. But on the Oracle side, we have information about the parcel. And I have blurred out the ownership information just to protect that private information. We have comments that can be attached to the parcel in our ERP, so those are shown here. And then we have applications and permits that have been issued for either new construction or repairs or renovations of space and changing of how this is a commercial property, so how those individual business spaces have been changed over the years. And so we've got a couple dozen permits here that have individual information that our permit counter staff can look at quickly at a glance without having to go into Oracle and look at each of these permits to see what was going on over time. One of the nice things, though, is that they can actually click this link here. I'm not going to do it because it's going to take a while for me to log into Oracle, but they can jump right into the Oracle permitting and licensing system right at that permit and look at more detail and actually interact with it, add comments, add fees, or whatever might be needed for that particular customer who's at the counter for service. For applications that become actual permits to do some construction, we also have related documents in Laserfish to document what they actually did. And so we can click that link and it'll take us back to Laserfish web link. And part of this permit is a sketch that the inspector will do to show where the repairs were, or if a new service line was installed and connected up to the property, what route that service line took, what cleanouts or other devices were installed on that line, and other information as well. So that's important information that we do go back and look at for doing research fairly frequently. We also have a link that this actually throws you directly to web link, so I'm not going to follow that link, but that shows a history of the county's assessor maps, the tax parcel maps for this particular parcel. So that's some of the ColdFusion things we're doing for our collection system. But for our treatment plant, we have a lot of similar information there as well. So we have a special website just for our treatment plant and our pumping stations. And this one shows our what we call our vertical assets. So on a treatment plant, you have buildings, and buildings contain lots of assets inside of them: pumps and control panels and electrical panels and instruments and blowers and other pieces of equipment. And so we call those vertical assets because often they're stacked on multiple floors within the same building. And so they operate more in a vertical fashion rather than the horizontal assets that, like our pipelines out in our service area. And so again, we have the same ability to interact with those assets by clicking and selecting them. I'm going to pick a building as an example. There we go. All right, so there is one of our buildings, our operation building. And again, same information panel on the left. We're pulling a lot of information from our GIS. Some other information we pull in here from some of the other systems we populate right into our GIS. But we have, again, the same kinds of links or similar links that we had for the collection system. We have maintenance history. And this may take a little bit to load. Hopefully it'll load fairly quickly here. I picked a building that's got probably a very extensive history, which may not have been the best choice. There we go. Okay, it came up. So these are the CityWorks work orders associated with that building, and we show not only the ones that are done, but we show ones that are in progress as well. So the ones in green are actually in progress right now. And again, we have lots of comments that are attached throughout when the work is being done, and users can go back and review all that data. If they so chose, if they wanted to actually go and drill down to this work order directly, they could click that link and it would open CityWorks and open that particular work order. So you can see it's the same information that we're presenting in that summary report. There's all the same comments, same dates and things that are in there. But there might be some additional information in here related to the work history, related to the previous work order that maybe spawned this work order. A lot of our work orders are cyclical, so they're on a time interval, 6 months, a year, sometimes they're 1 month. And when each work order is completed, it automatically creates the next work order for the next 6-month period or the next year. And so that shows up in this area here as a child work order. But if we go back to this maintenance report, so we've got all these work order history here. As you can see, it's extensive. There's 1,140 work orders just associated with that one building. But this is the work that was done since 2017. I mentioned earlier we had this other mainsaver, the legacy system. We didn't migrate that system into CityWorks. It was too difficult. So we just kind of mothballed it. But we still have the data there. So users can click that tab and see the mainsaver history for that same asset from early 2017 back in time, all the way, in some cases, back into the late 90s. So that may provide useful background information if they're trying to research a recurring problem that's happened sporadically throughout the years. You might notice there's two CityWorks tabs here, and this is the one that came up by default. So all of our work is linked through a unique identifier that we assign to each asset in our GIS system. When we create the asset in that system, it gets assigned a number automatically. It's kind of like the VIN number on a car. It stays with that car through the entire lifespan of that car until it goes to the record yard. And in various Department of Motor Vehicles, for whatever state it's registered in, that VIN number goes into the system as the main identifier. But many of our assets not buildings, but things like pumps or grinders. Those are um, sometimes we have to take them out of service or physically remove them to overhaul them or repair them. And so in many cases, we have a spare pump or grinder that's exactly identical or nearly identical that we can put in its place so that we can maintain operations. And then that one that got pulled out, it gets rebuilt, it gets put on a shelf and ready to go. So the next time one of them has to come out of service, they can swap that one back in. And because of that, they move around. And in our treatment plant, every process location, every specific thing that does something within our treatment process has another identifier, another number. We call it our asset position number. So, as an example, at the very front of our treatment plant, where all the flow comes in, we have a pumping station that lifts the flow up and sends it to our primary treatment basins. Those pumps, if one of them went out of service, we could pull it and put a spare in. Each one of those pumps has a position identifier that indicates kind of where in our treatment process the pump is, and then a specific unique number. And because things rotate around, sometimes problems are not with the specific asset, they're with that spot. So maybe a pump in that spot has some weird piping configuration going up to it, or maybe there's some environmental issue with that one pump that makes it behave differently than the others. And so when you look at the maintenance history, you might actually want to see, well, what happened with every pump that ever sat in that spot, not what happened to that pump, to the pump that's there now, which is what the first tab shows you. So this middle tab actually gives you a history of, and again, it's going to be the same because it's a building. That was a bad example, but it would show you every one of the individual pumps that sat in that spot, what the work was done while it was sitting in that spot. And that may help you identify those long-term problems or troubleshoot those long-term problems. So that's why we have two CityWorks tabs here. And they're pulling the same data, but they're using a different query behind the scenes to pull them in a different way. Um, Here we have a lot of asset management documents. So this is actually a good example to show you of what that actually looks like. So this building actually doesn't have a lot of them, but we have things like the original bid documents that built the building. We have schematics. We have technical reports. If this was a pump or some other device like that, if I were to change the view here and turn on, let's just turn on pumps because that's a good example. So all these little dots now that appeared on the map, those are all the different pumps that we have. So if I were to click on one of those, let's pick a bigger one. There we go. It's one of our primary effluent pumps. That one has more information. So here we've got an O&M manual, which is important for our maintenance folks to understand what they need to do when they do maintenance on that pump. But we also have a whole lot of photos that we've taken of those assets to help people that maybe aren't able to physically walk over and go into that building and look at the asset to see what does it look like. So as an example here, they've got a lot of, here, let's look at a side view of that pump. There you go. So that's actually the pump down here. This is the motor that's driving it. I think there's actually a gearbox in here with a clutch too that controls it. So this would help someone who has never been in this building, never actually walked in there and had to go down the stairs. There's a lower level. This is in a basement, and then there's a sub level. You have to go down to get to this pump. So it's not easy to get to. This allows users to have kind of a good insight of what it really looks like. I won't go to the job report. It's the same as the one we showed for, actually, let's go there real quick. This is the same report you saw for the collection system asset I showed earlier. Come on, there we go. So again, construction information at the top, or project information. Here are the record drawings. Again, here's asset management documents. So this document is actually linked through both the job that installed the asset and to the individual assets themselves. So it's linked two ways, so you can get to it from either direction. I think that's most of the things that I was going to show you, except for one tool that we've written. This is the one that exists solely in ColdFusion, and it's our spare parts application. So in our maintenance management system, where we do all the work orders and the inspections and all that stuff is tracked, the one piece of functionality it didn't have was a way of keeping track of what are the parts that are needed. If I have to go out and fix this pump, what are the parts that I need to pull from our warehouse to go and do this work? Our old work management system actually had such a module, but the new one didn't. And so I said, well, we can solve that. We can build one. It's not very complicated. Um, and so what it does is it ties the warehouse inventory that's now in Oracle uh, to the assets themselves that are in the GIS. So the way this works is we have these spare part lists. And on the left, you can see those are the names and identifiers of the various assets that are linked on a common spare part list. So I keep using the example of pump, so I'm just going to go with it. For a particular pump that we buy from a particular vendor or manufacturer that has a particular model number, we may use that same type of pump in three different locations in our treatment plant for possibly different purposes. Sometimes they're actually right next to each other for the same purpose, and sometimes they are in completely different buildings and they're serving a different purpose, but they're basically the same pump. So they have the same spare parts requirements. So all of those assets will be linked together on a single spare part list. So let's go to this one. Let's go to this one here because it's got actually a fair number of spare parts. So these two circulation pumps. If I click the link here, this is the spare part list. And let me let's see here. Show more than 10. Let's just show all. Make it easy. Okay, so I can scroll down through here. And this is giving you information about the number that's been assigned to this thing in our warehouse. So this is how our warehouse staff know where to look to find this bearing cover or this impeller nut for the and gasket. Um, that's the stock number in our Oracle warehouse management system. This actually is the identifier that tells them what shelf, on what aisle, in what compartment they will find the thing that they're looking for. This quantity needed column tells our staff how many they would need to actually repair one pump. If they were repairing two pumps, they'd have to double that quantity needed. The in stock number, that's coming from Oracle, that tells them how many are actually sitting on the shelf or supposed to be sitting on the shelf in the warehouse. And this minimum and maximum quantity is helpful for our maintenance planners to know how many do we typically want to keep on hand so that we can do repairs on one or more of those things at any given time. So we don't want to keep 50 of these things sitting on a shelf where they're aging and deteriorating over time. Let's just keep enough to be able to do one or two of these, and then we will order new ones as we start to use them so that we keep the stock fresh. Certain things like gaskets and things like that, they will wear out or deteriorate just sitting on a shelf. The material will age and it will become brittle and it will no longer be useful. So we don't want to keep a ton of those things sitting on a shelf where they're gonna get destroyed before they even get a chance to get used. And for the staff that are signed in and have permissions, they can actually, oops, my little alias didn't work. Give me a second here, I will fix that. There we go, now I'm signed in. You can see there's some things changed on this. Now I actually can manipulate the quantities needed. I can delete rows. I can add new items to the list. I can also completely nuke the entire list in one go if I wanted to. Only the warehouse manager has access to this button. And of course, if you click it, it really gives you a couple of chances to back out and not do it, because once it's gone, it's gone. And we don't. Some of these lists are extensive, and the effort to put them all back together again might be very difficult. So we don't want to do that by accident. Uh, Apologies. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. My Bluetooth headphones, my phone just grabbed it by mistake. I forgot to disconnect it from my phone. So I'm hoping my audio is still working. Okay, good. Um, okay, so that's kind of the around the world of the things that we're using Cold Fusion for. Let me go back to my slides here real quick. And talked about these. Oh, I actually glossed over this one. We do have. Let's see if that link works. Yep, perfect. Okay. Um, we have an application that we provided to our collection system maintenance planner to align the work schedules for our sewer mains that are in neighborhoods, so that we're not randomly going back to the same neighborhood month after month to clean individual pipes when we could clean all of the pipes in that neighborhood in the same month. Um, it's to reduce drive time, increase efficiency. So that's all done through a map interface, and throwing that person over to CityWorks for each work order so they can make the adjustments to the schedule, and then the map updates to show the schedule as the adjustments are being made. But one of the side effects of that is, as they start to align the schedules, they might actually start assigning too much work to fall in one month, more than what our crews can actually handle. And so this graph, this interface here is a Cold Fusion page that shows the assigned work, and you can change how far out you want to look. It defaults to 12 months, but you can go all the way up to 84 months out. And what they're looking for are these peaks. Like here, we've got 200 and something thousand feet of pipe that's scheduled to be maintained in May. But then in July, you only have 148,000. So perhaps some of the work that was assigned to May can be delayed 2 months and reassigned to July, and that would pull the balance a little closer to each other. Um, December, this one's really low, but it's the holidays, so a lot of our crews take time off, so we don't usually schedule nearly as much work during that time period. That's partially true in November, although not that much. You can see it's still a fairly good number, but October's got a lot too. So, these peaks out here, we work to pull those to the left. If it possible, pull these peaks to the right if it makes sense to do so. Um, but this graph fluctuates quite a bit over time. So if I set this to like 36 months and repulled the information, there are some recurring peaks on an annual basis, but there's also some peaks that are unique to a specific year. So these are opportunities to start balancing the schedule out well in advance. Okay, that I think is the last example I'm going to show. So let's go back to the slides. I didn't really have time to talk about this report, but that was another ColdFusion application. We did talk about the spare parts management. Okay, so to kind of wrap up, this is what our environment looks like. We've got a production server, and then we have a staging server. We're running on Windows, and we're currently running ColdFusion 2021. We haven't moved to 2023 yet. That is something we're planning to do. We've built this entire application on top of ColdBox, which is a very, very powerful and comprehensive MVC framework. It's fantastic. It's made my life a lot easier in development. Some of the libraries that we also use for the user interface stuff is there. On development, I literally just got upgraded to Windows 11 on Friday, so that slide's now out of date. But I am still running CommandBox. That's still the correct version. I have not moved to CommandBox 6. I run ColdFusion on CommandBox on my development laptop. I have a lot of unit and integration testing in TestBox, and I'm using VS Code as my editor. Okay, so to kind of wrap up, this is actually our next generation WebGIS. The previous iteration of this was much more simplistic. not nearly as comprehensive and robust. The next generation, we're looking to move to a newer map interface that will also allow us to have three-dimensional views. So for our treatment plant, we'd actually be able to do a three-dimensional view of the building, move between floors, uh, be able to identify information in like have 3D representations of some of our pumps and blowers and big pieces of equipment. Um, and We're also looking to upgrade our CityWorks system to the newer version, which is more HTML5 oriented. It's much more user friendly, much more pleasant on the eyes. Um, but the one thing that won't change is ColdFusion and those reports. They'll live on. That's still a providing the quick access to information with the jumping off to the individual business systems behind them if needed. But what we do with ColdFusion won't change, and that will stick around. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Um, I will leave this up here with my contact information if you want to follow up with me later. But we can also follow up on questions in the Q&A in the chat. I see there's one question, a couple of questions in the chat. So let's see here. What is the front end tool in use for data grids, charts, buttons, etc.? Okay, yeah. So let me do the chart one because that one's that's the standalone. For that one I was using C3 and D3 JS. It's a graphic library for doing it. Among other things, you can do charts with it. And that's that line graph for the two shops for maintenance, the blue and the orange lines. That was all done with that. Everything else I'm using Bootstrap. I'm not I haven't upgraded to the most recent version of Bootstrap, so I think I'm still on Bootstrap 3 dot something. But that's all most of the UI components. The tables and the widgets for controlling which records you see and filtering and all that. That's using the data grids, or I'm sorry, data tables .js library, and it has some supporting um, JavaScript and CSS to integrate with Bootstrap, so it follows the same color scheme and font and typography as Bootstrap. But the grid itself and the functionality and the record filtering and showing only a certain number of records at a time, that's all part of the data tables JavaScript library. Okay, another question from Rama. Are these maps rendered by Esri ArcMap via ArcIMS web map server and ArcSTE that connects call web servers written with ColdFusion? So the maps themselves, that interface, the central portal and the treatment plant portal, the interface itself is a off-the-shelf software that's made by it's now Vertigis. It previously was Latitude Geographics. They got bought out by Vertigis. The product was called GeoCortex. We're going to be moving from that to what's called Vertigis Studio Web sometime in the next year. That's the new 3D enabled HTML5 based web interface. It's the Chrome, the wrapper around the map itself. So the information panel on the left, the toolbars, all of that stuff. That's GeoCortex piece. The web map though is coming from Esri, but it's coming from ArcGIS, which is the newer version of what ArcIMS used to be. That's the web map server that provides those layers that overlay each other on the map interface. For the database calls on the ColdFusion side where I'm talking to the GIS data, I'm actually hitting the enterprise geodatabase in SQL Server directly. I'm not calling the REST API for the ArcGIS web server. I actually originally had intended to do that, but it was faster for me performance-wise to just go and hit the database directly. Hopefully that answers those questions. And it looks like there's one more coming in, so we'll. Oh, cool. Great, thank you. By the way, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but there is a Amazon gift card that I'm supposed to give out, and I think I'm going to give it out to the first person to ask a question. So, Bill, that will be you. If you can send a private chat message to me with your contact information, or send it to Apurva. He's the host of this meeting. Send your contact information to him, and he'll arrange to get you that gift card. All right. Well, I thank you all for your time with me this morning. I know everybody is probably very busy, and this was an hour-long session. I actually expected it to go shorter, but once I get talking, I tend to keep going. So I thank you for your time, and